I never thought I'd be the kind of person sitting in a divorce courtroom watching my entire life fall apart. But there I was, on a Tuesday morning in late September, wearing the navy dress my sister Maria helped me pick out the week before. She'd squeezed my hand and told me I looked strong professional. She said I'd get through this. My sister. My baby sister who I'd protected from bullies in middle school, who I'd helped through her bar exam when she thought she'd fail. Who was sitting right behind me in the gallery, tissue in hand, ready to support me through the worst day of my life. If only I'd known. The courtroom smelled like old wood and anxiety. Derek sat across the aisle with his attorney, a sharp-faced man in an expensive suit. My husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, wouldn't even look at me. Just stared straight ahead like I was a stranger. After 10 years of marriage. After building what I thought was a family. My attorney, Harold, was shuffling through papers beside me. He'd taken my case pro bono after Maria recommended him, calling him the best family lawyer she knew. Harold had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a gentle way of explaining legal things that made me feel less stupid for not understanding. Derek's attorney stood up, his voice filling the courtroom. Your Honour, we'd like to present evidence that the property at 847 Maple Street, currently titled solely in Mrs. Hayes' name, should be considered marital property subject to equitable distribution. My grandmother's house, the house where I'd spent every summer as a child, where Grandma taught me to paint watercolours on the back porch, where I'd felt safe and loved during my parents' messy arguments. She'd left it to me when she passed 6 months ago, and it was the only thing keeping me afloat through this nightmare. The property is inheritance, Your Honour, Harold said firmly. It was bequeathed directly to Mrs. Hayes by her grandmother and has never been marital property. Derek's attorney smiled like he'd been waiting for this. That would normally be true, Your Honour. However, my client invested significant marital funds into improving the property. We have contractor receipts totaling $50,000 for renovations. A new roof, electrical updates, structural repairs. These improvements increase the property value substantially, making it subject to division. My stomach dropped. $50,000? I'd paid for the roof repair myself, $8,000 from my teacher's salary that I'd been saving for 3 years. There were no other renovations, no electrical updates, nothing. This is ridiculous, I whispered to Harold. He patted my hand. Let me handle it. But before Harold could object, Judge Morrison was examining the documents Derek's attorney handed her. She was a stern woman with grey hair pulled back tight, the kind of judge who'd probably seen every trick and lie in family court. I'd been terrified of her when we first walked in. These appear to be legitimate contractor invoices, she said, flipping through pages. My heart pounded. How could there be invoices for work that never happened? I looked back at Maria, desperate for her reassurance. She was watching the proceedings intently, but something about her expression seemed off. Not shocked like I expected. More nervous? Your Honour, I'd like time to verify these documents, Harold began. That's when I heard the scrape of a chair in the gallery. I turned to see Maddie standing up, my 9-year-old daughter, who was supposed to be sitting quietly with her grandmother in the back row. Her face was pale but determined, and she was clutching her tablet, the one she carried everywhere for her reading apps and games. Your Honour? Maddie's voice was small but clear. The entire courtroom went silent. Judge Morrison looked up, surprised. Young lady, this is not... Please, Your Honour. It's important. Maddie's hands shook, but she stood her ground. Mom doesn't know I recorded what he said to Aunt Maria last night. The world seemed to stop spinning. My brain couldn't process what she'd just said. Derek talking to Maria, my sister Maria. Why would they be talking privately? And last night, Maria hadn't mentioned coming by the house. I watched Derek's face drain of colour. Pure panic flashed across his features before he tried to control it. And when I looked back at my sister, she was standing now, her mouth slightly open, one hand gripping the bench in front of her. Something cold settled in my chest. Judge Morrison's expression transformed from routine boredom to sharp, focused attention. Her eyes moved from Maddie to Derek to Maria, and I could practically see her mind working, piecing something together. "Young lady," Judge Morrison said carefully, "approach the bench with your mother and both attorneys. Now." Harold was already standing, helping me to my feet even though my legs felt like water. Maddie walked down the aisle, and I met her halfway, taking her hand. It was ice cold. "Baby, what are you talking about?" I whispered. She looked up at me with those serious brown eyes. "I'm sorry, Mom. I know I should have told you, but I wasn't sure what I heard. I had to be certain." Derek's attorney was objecting to something, his voice rising, but Judge Morrison silenced him with a look that could freeze fire. We reached the bench. Up close, Judge Morrison's face was all hard angles and no-nonsense authority. But when she looked at Maddie, something softened just slightly. "Now, young lady, I need you to explain very clearly what you have and where it came from." Maddie took a breath. Her voice was steadier than mine would have been. "Last night, I couldn't sleep. I came downstairs to get water and I heard Dad talking to someone in the office. The door was cracked open a little." My office. Derek had been staying in the house per the temporary court order until the divorce was final. We were like ghosts haunting different floors. I got closer and realized it was Aunt Maria's voice, Maddie continued. "It was almost midnight. I thought it was weird that she was there so late and that Mom didn't know. They were talking really quiet, like they didn't want anyone to hear." My heart was hammering so hard I thought everyone could hear it. "Something felt wrong about it," Maddie said. So I opened my recording app and held my tablet near the door. I recorded for about 5 minutes before they heard me on the stairs and I had to run back to my room. Judge Morrison's jaw tightened. "Do you have this recording with you?" Maddie nodded, holding up her tablet. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular," Derek's attorney sputtered. "Secret recordings? A child testifying without—" "Mr. Franklin, sit down and be quiet." Judge Morrison's voice could have cut steel. She looked at the bailiff. "Connect that tablet to the courtroom sound system. I want everyone to hear this." The bailiff took Maddie's tablet, and a moment later the speakers crackled to life. Then Derek's voice filled the courtroom, and my entire world shattered into pieces I'd never be able to put back together. "Maria, you promised me this would work." The voice coming through the courtroom speakers was definitely Derek's. I'd know that voice anywhere, the one that had whispered, "I love you," on our wedding day. That had read bedtime stories to Maddie when she was little, that had told me he wanted a divorce 3 months ago with barely any emotion at all. But now his voice sounded stressed, almost desperate. "Maria, you promised me this would work. That house is worth 400 grand. I get half, that's 200,000 for us, enough to start fresh together once this is over." Us. Together. The words hit me like a physical blow. Maria's voice came next, and I felt the ground disappear beneath my feet. My sister's voice, but different than I'd ever heard it. Softer. Intimate. The way you talk to someone you're close to. Really close to. "It will work, baby. I falsified the contractor receipts showing you spent 50,000 on renovations. The judge will see you invested in the property, making it marital." Jennifer's too trusting to fight hard anyway. She never questions anything I tell her. "Baby," she called him baby. My vision blurred. I grabbed the edge of the judge's bench to stay upright. Harold's hand was on my shoulder, steadying me, but nothing could steady what was happening inside my mind. The recording continued. Derek again. "What about Maddie? And your sister? Will she ever forgive you?" There was a pause, then Maria's laugh, bitter and cold in a way I'd never heard from her before. "Maddie will adjust. Kids are resilient. And Jennifer?" Another pause. "Honestly, Derek, she's always been weak. She got the house, she got Grandma's love, she got everything handed to her while I had to fight for every scrap of attention. This is just balancing the scales. Once we have the money, we can finally be together openly." No more sneaking around. The courtroom erupted. People gasped. Someone behind me said, "Oh my God," loud enough for everyone to hear. I heard my mother's voice cry out, "Maria, no," from the back of the room. But I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't process what I was hearing. My sister, my baby sister who I'd loved and protected our entire lives, who I'd shared a bedroom with growing up, who'd been my maid of honor at my wedding to Derek, who'd held my hand through Grandma's funeral and promised we'd always have each other. She was sleeping with my husband. She'd fabricated evidence to steal my inheritance. She'd called me weak. I turned slowly, like moving through water, to look at the gallery. Maria was standing, her face bright red, her hands clenched at her sides. Our eyes met across the courtroom, and for just a second, I saw something flicker in her expression. Guilt? Fear? But then it hardened into something else. Defiance, maybe. Or anger at being caught. Derek had his head in his hands, elbows on the table. His attorney looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Judge Morrison slammed her gavel down. The sharp crack cut through the chaos. "Order! I will have order in this courtroom." Her voice boomed with authority. The room fell silent except for my mother's quiet sobbing in the back row. "Bailiff, stop the recording." The speakers went quiet, but the words kept echoing in my head. Baby. Weak. Balancing the scales. Judge Morrison's face was a mask of controlled fury. In 25 years on the bench, her expression said she'd seen terrible things, but this was something special. "Ms. Winters," her voice was ice, "stand where you are." "Mr. Hayes, look at me when I'm speaking." Derek lifted his head slowly. His face was grey. "Bailiff, I want both Ms. Winters and Mr. Hayes detained in this building. They are not to leave, they are not to speak to each other, and they are certainly not to approach Mrs. Hayes or the child. Clear?" "Yes, Your Honour," the bailiff said, moving toward Maria. "Your Honour, I can explain," Maria started. "You will not speak unless I ask you a direct question." Judge Morrison's words could have frozen the sun. "You are an officer of this court, Ms. Winters. A divorce attorney. You know exactly how serious these actions are, and you chose to commit them anyway. Against your own sister." Maria's mouth snapped shut, but her eyes were blazing. I realized with growing horror that she wasn't sorry. She was angry that her plan had failed. Harold had his laptop open, fingers flying across the keyboard. "Your Honour, if I may. The property records clearly show that 847 Maple Street was transferred via inheritance deed directly to Mrs. Jennifer Hayes 6 months ago. There is no record of it ever being considered marital property. The deed lists Mrs. Hayes as sole owner." "Let me see those documents," Judge Morrison demanded. While Harold pulled up the records, Derek's attorney, Mr. Franklin, stood up shakily. "Your Honour, I need to state for the record that I was unaware of any falsification. My client provided me with what appeared to be legitimate contractor receipts. I would never knowingly submit false evidence to this court." "We'll get to you later, Mr. Franklin," Judge Morrison said without looking at him. She was studying Harold's laptop screen, her expression growing darker by the second. "Mrs. Hayes," she said, finally looking at me. Her voice gentled just slightly. "I need to ask you some direct questions. Are you able to answer them right now, or do you need a moment?" I found my voice, though it came out shaky. "I can answer. Did you ever authorize any renovations to the property at 847 Maple Street that cost anywhere near $50,000? "No, Your Honour. I paid for a roof repair myself, $8,000. That's the only major work done since I inherited the house. Do you have receipts for that repair?" "Yes, Your Honour. In my records at home." Harold was already typing. "Your Honour, I actually have those receipts in my file. Mrs. Hayes provided them to me during our initial consultation. I also have the contact information for the contractor who performed the work." "Get him on the phone. Now." Judge Morrison looked at the bailiff. "Call a recess. 30 minutes. I want Mr. and Ms. Winters held separately." I want the contractor on a call within 15 minutes, and someone get Mrs. Hayes and her daughter some water. She stood, and everyone else in the courtroom rose automatically. But before she left the bench, she looked directly at me again. Mrs. Hayes, I want you to know something. This is not your fault. You trusted the people who should have been trustworthy. That's not weakness. That's being a good person. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Then she was gone, her black robes sweeping behind her as she exited to her chambers. The bailiff was escorting Derek out one door and Maria out another. Maria looked back at me once and I saw her mouth move. I couldn't hear the words, but I could read her lips. I'm sorry. But her eyes told a different story. They were cold and resentful, filled with a bitterness I'd never seen before. Or maybe it had always been there, and I'd just been too blind, too trusting to notice. Maddie pressed against my side, and I wrapped my arms around her, holding on like she was the only real thing left in the world. Because right then, she was. The courthouse hallway was cold and institutional, with fluorescent lights that made everyone look slightly sick. I sat on a wooden bench with Maddie pressed against my side, my arm around her shoulders. She hadn't let go of me since we left the courtroom. Harold was pacing nearby, phone pressed to his ear, talking to the contractor who'd fixed my roof. My parents had rushed over from the gallery. Mum's face was blotchy from crying, and Dad looked like he wanted to punch something. How long has this been going on? Mum asked for the third time, her voice breaking. How did we not see it? I shook my head. I couldn't answer because I didn't know. 18 months, Maria had said on the recording. 18 months of family dinners where she'd sat across from me, smiling. 18 months of Sunday phone calls where she'd asked how I was doing, listened to me complain about Derek becoming distant. 18 months of her pretending to be my sister while she was sleeping with my husband. Mum, Maddie's voice was small. Are you mad at me for recording? I pulled her closer, kissing the top of her head. No, baby, never. You were so brave. You saved us. I heard them other times too, she said quietly. Not talking, but I'd come downstairs late and hear Dad on the phone, laughing in a way he never laughed with us anymore. And once I saw Aunt Maria's car parked down the street at night when she said she was at a work conference. I thought maybe I was imagining things. My heart broke a little more. My 9-year-old daughter had been carrying this weight, these suspicions, trying to make sense of things that no child should have to understand. You weren't imagining anything, I told her. You were right to trust your instincts. Dad sat down on my other side. Jenny, whatever you need. Money for attorneys, a place to stay, anything. Your mother and I are here. I know, Dad. My voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. I can't believe Maria would do this. My own sister. Mum made a choking sound. I don't understand where we went wrong with her. The jealousy between you two when you were young, we thought she'd outgrown it. She seemed so successful, so put together. The jealousy. I remembered it now, though I'd tried to forget over the years. Maria always competing with me, even over things that didn't matter. When I got the lead in the school play, she'd been furious. When Grandma had taken me on that special trip to New York for my 16th birthday, Maria hadn't spoken to either of us for weeks. When I'd gotten engaged to Derek, she'd made a comment about how she could do better when her time came. But I'd thought we'd moved past all that. We were adults. She'd become a successful attorney. She'd seemed happy for me, at least on the surface. Harold ended his call and walked over, his expression grim but determined. The contractor is calling into the judge's chambers in 5 minutes. He's pulling his original invoices and payment records. He remembers the job clearly, said it was just the roof, $8,000, paid by check from Jennifer Hayes alone. He never provided any receipts to Derek. So where did those fake receipts come from? Dad asked. Maria manufactured them, Harold said. She's a divorce attorney. She knows what documents a judge needs to see. She probably created fake letterhead, fake invoices, made it all look legitimate. If that recording hadn't surfaced, the judge might have believed them. The bailiff appeared at the end of the hallway. Judge Morrison is ready for you. Back in the courtroom, the atmosphere had changed completely. Derek sat alone at his table. His attorney had moved several seats away as if physical distance could separate him from the disaster. Maria was at a different table entirely, a court-appointed attorney beside her now. She wouldn't look at me. Judge Morrison entered, and we all stood. When she sat, her expression was carved from stone. "I've spoken with the contractor," she began. "Mr. Robert Chen has provided his original invoices, payment records, and photographs of the completed work." The work was exactly as Mrs. Hayes described. Roof repair only, $8,000, paid in full by Mrs. Hayes via personal check. Mr. Chen states unequivocally that he never provided any documentation to Mr. Hayes and that he performed no other work on the property. She held up the papers Derek's attorney had submitted earlier. "These documents are fabrications, forgeries. I've also taken the liberty of having my clerk do some preliminary research. The contractor company listed on these fake receipts doesn't exist. The business license number is fraudulent. Ms. Winters, as an attorney, you would know exactly how to make fake documents look real." Maria's court-appointed attorney stood. "Your Honor, my client wishes to invoke her Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination." "Noted," Judge Morrison said coldly. "Mr. Hayes, stand up." Derek stood slowly, looking like he might be sick. "I'm going to ask you questions under oath, and I suggest you think very carefully before you lie to me again. Did you have an intimate relationship with Maria Winters?" A long pause. Then, barely audible, "Yes, Your Honor." "How long?" "About 18 months. Hearing him say it out loud made it real in a way the recording hadn't. I felt Mom's hand grip mine. "Did Ms. Winters create the false contractor receipts that were submitted to this court?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Did you know they were false when your attorney submitted them?" Derek's attorney started to object, but Derek cut him off. "Yes, I knew. Maria said it was the only way to get what we deserved. She said Jennifer didn't need that big house, that it wasn't fair Grandma left it all to her." "What you deserved," Judge Morrison repeated, her voice dripping with disdain. "Mr. Hayes, you committed fraud. You lied under oath. You conspired with an officer of the court to fabricate evidence. Do you understand the severity of these actions?" "Yes, Your Honor." Derek's voice was barely a whisper. Judge Morrison opened a folder on her bench. "I've also had my clerk pull your financial records, which Mr. Bennett here wisely subpoenaed weeks ago. It seems you've been renting an apartment across town for the past 8 months. The lease shows 2 occupants. I'm guessing Ms. Winters was the other one." Derek nodded miserably. "I also see charges for hotels, restaurants, jewelry purchases. Quite a lot of spending for someone claiming financial hardship in divorce proceedings. A $3,000 necklace purchased 5 months ago. Mrs. Hayes, did you receive this necklace?" "No, Your Honor," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Didn't think so." She flipped through more pages. "Couples spa treatments, weekend getaways to wine country. All charged to credit cards that should have been paying for your daughter's school expenses and your family's household bills. While your wife, the woman you made vows to, was teaching middle school art classes and saving every penny to fix a leaky roof." Derek had tears running down his face now, but I felt nothing for him. No pity, no satisfaction. Just emptiness, where love used to be. Judge Morrison looked at Maria. "Ms. Winters, your law license is suspended effective immediately, pending a full bar association investigation. I'm also recommending criminal charges for fraud and falsification of legal documents." Maria's face went white. "As for you, Mr. Hayes," the judge continued, "we're no longer just talking about divorce. We're talking about fraud, perjury, and conspiracy. This court is going to take a very thorough look at exactly what you two have done." Judge Morrison wasn't done. She leaned forward, her hands folded on the bench, and I could see the full weight of her authority bearing down on Derek and Maria. "Let me be absolutely clear about what's going to happen now," she said. "First, regarding the property at 847 Maple Street. Mrs. Hayes, that house is yours. 100% yours. It was inheritance, it remains inheritance, and Mr. Hayes has exactly zero claim to it. Not one penny. Relief flooded through me, though it felt distant, muted by everything else. Second, regarding custody of Madison Hayes. Judge Morrison looked at Maddie, who sat pressed against me, and her expression softened just slightly. That child has shown more integrity and courage than either of the adults who are supposed to be setting an example for her. Mrs. Hayes, you are awarded full primary custody. Derek's head snapped up. Your Honour, please. I'm not finished, Mr. Hayes. You will have supervised visitation only, contingent on several conditions. You will complete a minimum of 6 months of family therapy. You will undergo a psychological evaluation, and you will demonstrate financial stability and appropriate judgment before I even consider unsupervised time with your daughter. Your Honour, I love my daughter. Then you should have thought about that before you conspired to defraud her mother and destroy her family for money. Judge Morrison's voice could have cut glass. Love isn't just words, Mr. Hayes, it's actions. And your actions have shown that you prioritised money and your affair over your child's well-being. Derek sank back into his chair, broken. Third, the financial matters. Judge Morrison pulled out another document. Mr. Bennett, your financial discovery was extremely thorough. It shows that Mr. Hayes withdrew $38,000 from the joint savings account over the past 8 months. Money Mrs. Hayes believed was being saved for Madison's college fund. Where did that money go, Mr. Hayes? Derek didn't answer immediately. His attorney leaned over and whispered something to him. I asked you a question, Judge Morrison said, her patience clearly wearing thin. The apartment, Derek said finally. The furniture, the security deposit, and paying off some debts. What kind of debts? Another long pause. Credit cards. The ones I used for Maria and me. So he'd stolen our daughter's college money to finance his affair with my sister. The hits just kept coming. Harold stood up. Your Honour, if I may. Mrs. Hayes was completely unaware that this money was being withdrawn. She trusted her husband had access to the account for legitimate family expenses. She's been living frugally, taking on extra tutoring jobs after school to save money, while Mr. Hayes was spending thousands on his affair. Judge Morrison's expression darkened further. Mr. Hayes, you will reimburse that entire amount, $38,000, to be placed in a protected college fund for Madison. The account will be in Mrs. Hayes's name only, with Madison as the beneficiary. You will have no access to it. Your Honour, I don't have that kind of money readily available. Then you'll set up a payment plan. I don't care if it takes you 5 years. That money will be repaid in full. She made a note on her paperwork. Additionally, you will pay Mrs. Hayes $40,000 in compensatory damages for emotional distress, legal fees, and the marital funds you misappropriated. That's $78,000 total, Mr. Hayes. I suggest you figure out how to get it. Derek looked like he might faint. His attorney was scribbling notes frantically, probably calculating how badly this would destroy his client financially. But we're not done yet, Judge Morrison continued. Mr. Hayes, you committed perjury in my courtroom. You submitted false documents with the intent to defraud. Those are criminal matters. I'm holding you in contempt of court, and I'm referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for potential criminal prosecution. The courtroom was completely silent except for my mother's quiet crying behind me. Judge Morrison turned her attention to Maria. Ms. Winters, I've been a judge for 25 years. I've seen people do terrible things to each other in divorce court. But what you've done is among the worst because you betrayed not only the trust of this court, but the trust of your own family. You fabricated legal documents. You used your position as an attorney to help someone commit fraud. And you did it to your own sister. Maria's court-appointed attorney stood. Your Honour, my client maintains her Fifth Amendment rights. I'm not asking her to incriminate herself. I'm telling her what's going to happen. Judge Morrison's voice was ice. Ms. Winters, as I stated earlier, your law license is suspended immediately. I'm filing a formal complaint with the State Bar Association, and I'm recommending permanent disbarment. I'm also referring your actions to the District Attorney for criminal charges of fraud, conspiracy, and falsification of legal documents. For the first time, I saw real fear cross Maria's face. Her career, everything she'd worked for, was gone. Part of me felt a sick satisfaction, but mostly I just felt hollow. I'm also issuing a restraining order, Judge Morrison added. Ms. Winters, you are not to contact Mrs. Hayes or Madison Hayes by any means. No phone calls, no emails, no letters, no social media contact, no third-party messages. If you violate this order, you will be arrested. Is that clear? Maria's attorney answered for her. Yes, Your Honor. Judge Morrison looked at Derek's attorney, who seemed to be trying to make himself as small as possible. Mr. Franklin, I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt that you were an unwitting participant in this fraud. But I suggest you withdraw from this case immediately and be more careful about vetting your client's evidence in the future. Yes, Your Honor. I'll be filing a motion to withdraw today. Mr. Franklin looked at Derek with undisguised disgust. Good. Now let's talk about the divorce itself. Judge Morrison flipped to another page. Given the circumstances, the affair, the fraud, the misappropriation of funds, this is about as clear-cut as it gets. The divorce is granted, effective immediately. Mrs. Hayes gets full custody as I stated. Mr. Hayes gets supervised visitation. The house remains Mrs. Burt Hayes' sole property. Mr. Hayes will pay child support based on his income, plus the restitution amounts I outlined. Mrs. Hayes is awarded her attorney's fees, to be paid by Mr. Hayes. She signed several documents with swift, decisive strokes. Is there anything else, Mr. Bennett? Harold stood. Just one thing, Your Honor. I'd like to request that the court seal the audio recording to protect Madison's privacy. While it was crucial evidence, I don't want it becoming public and causing her further trauma. Agreed. The recording will be sealed. Judge Morrison looked at Maddie directly. Young lady, what you did took remarkable courage. You told the truth even though it was hard, even though it involved people you love. That's integrity. Don't ever lose that. Maddie nodded, pressing closer to me. Judge Morrison gathered her papers. We're adjourned. Mr. Hayes, Ms. Winters, you'll both be hearing from the District Attorney's office. I suggest you retain good criminal defense attorneys. She stood, and everyone rose with her. As she left the courtroom, I felt Maddie's arms wrap around my waist. Is it over, Mom? She whispered. I looked at Derek slumped in his chair, his life in ruins. At Maria being escorted out by the bailiff, her face a mask of shock and anger. Yes, baby, I said softly. It's over. 4 months had passed since that day in court, and I was finally learning what peace felt like again. I stood in Grandma's kitchen, my kitchen now, watching morning sunlight stream through the window over the sink. The same window where Grandma used to place her African violets. The same countertop where we'd rolled out sugar cookie dough together when I was Maddie's age. I'd repainted the walls a warm butter yellow last month, erasing the neutral beige Derek had insisted on years ago. Every room in the house was slowly becoming mine again, or maybe becoming mine for the first time. The coffee maker beeped, and I poured myself a cup, breathing in the rich smell. Small pleasures. I was learning to appreciate them again. Maddie shuffled into the kitchen in her pajamas, her hair a mess from sleep. Morning, Mom. Morning, sweetheart. Pancakes or waffles? Waffles. With strawberries. She climbed onto one of the kitchen stools, the same ones Grandma had owned for 30 years. Always with strawberries. I pulled out the waffle maker and we fell into our Saturday morning routine. This was our time. Just the two of us before the day really began. Are you teaching the art class this morning? Maddie asked, watching me mix the batter. Yeah, we've got 6 kids coming today. Want to help me set up? Can I show the little kids how to do watercolor blending, like Grandma taught you? My throat tightened with emotion, but it was the good kind now, the kind that came from remembering love instead of loss. That would be perfect, baby. The art classes had been Harold's idea, actually. During one of our final meetings to close out the divorce paperwork, he'd noticed my paintings leaning against the wall in the house. Pieces I'd been working on in the evenings, pouring my feelings onto canvas because I didn't know what else to do with them. "You're really talented," he'd said. "Have you thought about teaching?" "I teach middle school art," I'd reminded him. "No, I mean here, in your home. Community classes. Something that's just yours." So, I'd converted the garage into a studio space, put up an ad at the local library, and started teaching Saturday morning classes for kids. It wasn't about the money, though the extra income helped. It was about creating something positive in the space that had almost been taken from me, filling Grandma's house with children's laughter and creativity and joy. After breakfast, Maddie and I set up the garage studio. I'd painted the walls white and installed good lighting, arranged work tables and easels, stocked shelves with supplies. Through the open garage door, I could see the rose garden we'd planted in the backyard, the bushes already showing early growth. The kids started arriving at 9, Tommy, who was 7 and loved painting dinosaurs, the Chen twins, who argued cheerfully about everything, little Ashley, who was so shy she barely spoke but created the most beautiful abstract pieces, and 2 new kids today, brothers who'd just moved to the neighborhood. Maddie helped me get them settled, showing them where the aprons were, explaining how to clean brushes properly. She was a natural teacher, patient and encouraging. Watching her with the younger kids, I felt a fierce pride that had nothing to do with the divorce or the court case. This was just my daughter being herself, kind, creative, brave. We were halfway through the class, everyone absorbed in their paintings, when my phone buzzed with a text from Harold. Final payment from Derek came through. "College fund is now fully restored. $38K. Additional damages payment plan is on track. Everything's handled." I stared at the message for a long moment. Derek was working at a furniture store now, his real estate license suspended pending the outcome of the criminal investigation. The district attorney had decided to pursue charges for fraud and perjury, and Derek had taken a plea deal, community service, probation, and full restitution to avoid jail time. He'd lost almost everything: his career, his reputation, his family. Maria had lost even more. The State Bar Association had permanently revoked her law license after a full investigation revealed she'd helped 2 other clients fabricate evidence in their divorce cases. She'd moved to Arizona, I'd heard through my parents, working as a paralegal under someone else's license. She'd sent one letter about a month after the trial, trying to explain herself. I'd burned it without reading past the first line. "Jenny, I know you'll never understand, but I need you to know that I always loved you, even when I hated you too." I didn't need to understand. I didn't need her explanations or justifications or apologies. I just needed her gone from my life. My parents had struggled with it more than I had. Mum still cried sometimes, mourning the loss of one daughter while trying to support the other. Dad had wanted to cut Maria off completely, but Mum couldn't quite do it. She still sent birthday cards, still took Maria's occasional phone calls. I didn't ask them not to. Maria was their daughter too, but she wasn't my sister anymore. That relationship had died in a courtroom 4 months ago. "Mrs. Hayes?" Ashley's small voice pulled me back to the present. "Is this good?" I looked at her painting, a garden full of flowers in impossible colours, purple grass and orange sky. "It's beautiful, Ashley. I love how you mix the colours." She smiled, a rare full smile, and went back to work. After the class ended and the parents picked up their kids, Maddie and I cleaned up the studio. She was quieter than usual, and I recognised the look on her face. She had something on her mind. "What is it, baby?" She put down the paintbrush she was rinsing. "I have supervised visit with Dad tomorrow." "I know." The visits happened twice a month at a family counselling centre. A therapist was always present, monitoring their interactions. Derek had been attending therapy like the court ordered, working through his issues, trying to become someone worthy of unsupervised time with his daughter. "Do you think he's really getting better?" Maddie asked. "Or is he just doing it because the judge said he has to?" I considered the question carefully. Derek had been sending Maddie letters. The court allowed written communication with my approval. The first few had been full of excuses and self-pity, but the recent ones were different, more honest, taking responsibility, apologizing not just for what he'd done to me, but for what he'd put Maddie through. "I think maybe both," I said finally. "I think he's doing it because he has to, but also because he's starting to understand what he lost, what he threw away." "I'm still really mad at him," Maddie said quietly. "You have every right to be, sweetheart. What he did was wrong. It hurt us both badly. But he's still my dad. Yes, he is. And it's okay to be angry and still love him. Feelings can be complicated like that." She nodded slowly, processing this. "Do you still love him?" "No," I said, and it was true. The love had died, but the anger was fading too. What I felt now was mostly just nothing. Derek was becoming a stranger, someone I used to know. But I don't hate him either. I just want to move forward with our life. That afternoon, after Maddie went to her friend's house to work on a school project, I found myself in the spare bedroom that I'd converted into my art studio. My personal space, not the teaching space. The walls were covered with my paintings, some finished, some still in progress. There was a new piece I'd been working on. A portrait, though not of anyone specific. Just a woman standing in a doorway looking out at a garden. Half her face was in shadow, half in sunlight. I wasn't sure what it meant yet, but I kept coming back to it, adding layers, adjusting colours. My phone rang. I almost didn't answer, it was an unknown number, but something made me pick up. "Jennifer Hayes?" A man's voice, professional but warm. "Yes?" "My name is Thomas Wright. I own the Riverside Gallery downtown. I was at your art show last month, the community centre exhibition." My heart skipped. I'd displayed 3 paintings at a local show, mostly just to be part of the community art scene. I hadn't expected anything to come from it. "I was very impressed with your work," he continued, "particularly the piece called Inheritance. I'd like to talk to you about possibly showing your work at my gallery. We have an opening in our Emerging Artists series." I looked around my little studio, at the paintings I'd created while putting my life back together. Art that came from pain but was transforming into something else, something hopeful. "I'd love to talk about that," I heard myself say. After we hung up, I sat down on the old armchair in the corner, another piece from Grandma's house, and let myself feel it. Not just the excitement about the gallery, though that was real, but everything. The whole journey from that terrible day in court to this moment right here. I'd lost my husband. I'd lost my sister. I'd lost the version of my life I thought I was living. But I'd kept the things that mattered. My daughter, my home, my integrity, myself. That evening, Maddie and I made dinner together. Stir-fry her favourite. We ate on the back porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The rose bushes were starting to bud, and in a few weeks they'd bloom. "Mom," Maddie said, putting down her fork, "are we going to be okay?" I looked at my daughter, this brave, smart, incredible person who'd saved us both with her courage and her recording app and her unwillingness to let lies win. "Yeah, baby," I said, meaning it completely. "We're going to be better than okay." She smiled, and we finished dinner as the stars started to appear overhead. In Grandma's house, our house, with our life stretching out before us like a blank canvas, ready for whatever we wanted to create next. The recording that changed everything was sealed in a court file, but its impact would last forever. Not as a wound, but as a reminder. Truth matters. Courage matters, and sometimes the smallest voices speak the loudest truths. We were free. We were home. We were exactly where we were meant to be.